know?
I
And
think
you
the
may,
Scandinavians also are really big on like psychiatric drugs and psychiatric pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, I think they're like
yes.
the
I was also gonna
biggest. I
Well,
think they're the biggest
it's
manufacturers of it.
and they're also it's interesting that they call them the
So
happiest
it's
states in the
Belgium.
world,
Belgium's
and I
number
think it's
one.
like three.
Belgium. It's Belgium that's number one.
Really?
But to your point about MDMA, there's the networks that are working to like get it legitimized and legalized right now, like
Peter Thiel.
MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, right? You guys know MAPS.
Very familiar. I've done
It's
some work with them
so
actually.
Well, so Rick Doblin, like who went to the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, and was like definitely connected with these like Epstein networks. He was he's the head of Maps, and they're like spinning off Maps into a private company called Lycos, and Lycos Biopharma, and they're doing like clinical
Well,
trials
yeah,
for MDMA, and he like Rick Doblin is definitely like Mossad, CIA. I mean, he always has been. He was in the scene in Dallas in the 1980s, like when like MDMA became like a recreational drug. He was the one who was like pushing it. He was importing it like through Amsterdam with the Israelis. Like, I mean, this is like history right here.
yeah.
And he was
Um,
like a big black marketeer of MDMA, and now he's the one who's like pushing it as this like cure, wholesale cure for like every you know uh, psychiatric issue, and getting like clinical trials approved and getting all the funding for it. And he has like Joe Rogan wearing the MAP shirts on air, and I mean it's like you talk about the like managed truthers, like Joe Rogan is the one who's like pushing all that heavy and getting like funding from regular people, like
Yeah.
donations,
yeah,
grassroots for this.
you can't underestimate the role of Johns Hopkins University in Maps.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
crazy. I lived in Baltimore before I moved last summer, and I did a fair amount of work for Johns Hopkins. I have some friends in the psychedelics department there, which is how I know some Maps people. But it's ingrained into the medical infrastructure at Johns Hopkins. And for those of you that don't understand, that's probably the nation's top hospital, historically and even today in terms of
And top
research.
medical school.
Yeah, it's like the top of the top in that field. And
It was
so it was actually started during the Civil War as a battle hospital, and then it developed out of that. Um,
um and Rockefeller, like when they funded it, and their intent, like they actually stated, we want Johns Hopkins to be the West Point of medical
yeah,
schools.
it's crazy.
That was exactly what they said. And in those trials at Johns Hopkins for the mushrooms, that's being funded
Oh yeah,
by
I took
people
some of
in the
those.
Rockefeller
I
family.
did that trial. I,
Hey, we don't
Literally
talk about
being
drugs here.
literally being funded by like the people in the Rockefeller family, like today. And one of their guys, do y'all know who Alan Rockefeller
yeah,
is? He's like he's like this mycology expert. And he actually is a really smart dude. He's got a big following on social media, but
he
he's going
he
around the
lives he
world.
yeah he actually has a house that was like 2 or 3 blocks from my house in downtown Baltimore.
Uh, well, he mostly lives in Oakland,
Yeah,
California.
now he does, but they still
It
have
doesn't
a.
differ.
There's a
He
Rockefeller house in Baltimore. One of them lives there.
well, it's really interesting what this guy Alan Rockefeller is doing, though. I mean, he is like the world's authority on DNA testing and classifying mushrooms. So he has like this insane lab, and he's focusing on psilocybin, and like doing DNA sequencing on these mushrooms. And like this is like what the Rockefeller family is into. This is like the modern incarnation of the Rockefellers. That's what
Oh
they're
yeah,
doing.
they're high level drug dealers, dude.
Oh yeah, big time.
Like yeah, 100%. And I mean, Baltimore's an interesting city. I'm glad I had the opportunity to live there for like a few years, just to like get the vibe. I never want to even go back to visit. It's pretty terrible place, but it's hard to describe the level of drugs that are being used in Baltimore. Like every city has drugs, and I'm used to that. Hell, I lived in New York City for 15 years. Like there's drugs all over the place, but you get used to that. but it's on a different level in Baltimore, man. And I think it's because of Hopkins being there, and they have a Center for Psychedelic Studies that's a degree track part of the medical program, and that's where a lot of the cutting edge research stuff gets is coming out of. It's coming out of that specific degree track, and that's all tied up with Rockefeller and MAPS.
And Baltimore is also really close to like Edgewood Arsenal, right? Like where they were
Yeah,
doing, like the LSD trials on,
it's all
for
like
MK Ultra in
yeah,
the
it's
50s
all
with
right there, and it's an hour and a half from Langley.
well, yeah.
Yeah,
But like specifically like at Edgewood, where they were doing with like Sidney Gottlieb and like those circles, like like the earliest testing of
well, that's
psychedelics. I mean,
where
that they were getting it from Albert Hoffman at
yeah, and
Sandoz.
the
Like
other guy that was running Edgewood was Dr. Andrija Puharich.
yes,
Yeah, who
oh yeah.
yeah, big time. That guy's fascinating. Everybody should look into him.
Anybody who's into Star Trek should know about him, because Gene Roddenberry was one of the people in Andre Puharich's Circle of the Nine that were doing those channeling
Yes.
sessions.
Yeah.
That's where Star Trek comes from.
Star Trek is also very clearly United Nations reference. It's like when you think about the UN peacekeepers, like, oh, it's those that benevolent alien council in Star Trek.
Yeah.
But the newest Star Trek like is all tied in. I haven't seen it, but like again with mushrooms, and there's like this like quantum mycelium stuff that's in there, and they had Paul Stamets, who is like totally
That's
CIA,
hilarious.
but Paul Stamets, like they have like a character named after him.
Well, dude,
he consulted on the.
Stamets has been working on mycelium bioweapons for the DoD.
Oh yeah,
It's crazy, dude.
He is super sus. He came out of the Evergreen State College, right?
Yeah.
In Washington, and Evergreen is like a CIA, like
Super
social
school.
engineering laboratory, right? So like it was he and Matt Groening from The Simpsons were there at the same time.
Yeah.
No joke, right? And then that's where Brett Weinstein was when he, with all of this like woke, whole thing, like the whole culture war of wokeness came from his, like the whole thing that happened to him at Evergreen in 2017.
Dude,
so,
it goes.
Like, everything coming out of Evergreen is
it goes
sus.
back. It goes back older. Like there's high schools in Washington that basically feed into Evergreen.
Yes.
And those high schools.
And in Oregon too.
Yeah, and those high schools were all like Manhattan Project schools, dude.
Dude, these pieces of shit are everywhere? Like,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's
crazy. But they do have like these these colleges in certain key locations that are kind of like like sort of regional headquarters. Like they have Evergreen up in Olympia, but they also have Lewis and Clark here in Oregon and Portland. Like that's another, like they actually like straight up recruit on campus the CIA. Like they have so many like students that matriculate from graduating the school into the CIA, and they have like numerous faculty that were so-called former like Lewis and Clark. People have never even heard of this place. It's got like 1,200 students, and it's like a straight up CIA headquarters.
Yeah, I mean, I went, like I mentioned to the rest of the chat, but like I studied at Juilliard, which is a music school, but it's all CIA'd up, like 100%.
Juilliard is?
Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they even have one in Valencia. No,
crazy.
Valencia is like the social engineering occult capital of the world. It's like where they have like all these like cutting edge IMAX immersive technology stuff, the Salvador Dali Museum for Surreal. Like you've got so much esoteric, but they have a branch in Valencia for Juilliard.
It's not actually Juilliard that has a branch in Valencia. It's Berkeley in Boston. But that has a branch in Valencia.
Wait, no, Valencia. That's China. That's China. No,
Juilliard has a campus in China.
No, that's right. No. Yeah. I've covered both. I got that confused.
Yeah, I went to both. I got a second master's degree from Valencia, which was fascinating because I got to live in the capital of Western esotericism for a while.
Some of the schools I think have also I think they became for the Chinese, like NYU.
Yeah, I mean, these elite schools, especially like these specialized programs, like Juilliard's a tiny school. It's 800 students. So it's tiny. But that level of elite inaccessibility lends itself really well for grooming intelligence assets. I mean,
Well, like
especially when
Yale,
you're
for example.
yeah, and especially when you're like in the arts, like there's a reason why the CIA recruits a lot of musicians is because we travel just by the nature of the work, we travel all over the time and we interact with people from all cultures and all across the world. It's just a part of the job, right? So like if you're the CIA, you're looking at musicians, it's like, holy crap, that's an asset, you know?
So, I mean, when you talk about like CIA using musicians and stuff, I mean, is it stuff where like they're training them to use certain like frequencies, a certain like tonal
I got
patterns
into
and
that.
things
I
like
actually
that, like for
when I
for
was
mind
in
programming and stuff?
when I was in Valencia, I was actually a teaching assistant for the audio engineering program, and I mean that's part of the curriculum. Actually, is like frequency control. I mean, you learn how to do that as an audio engineer. I mean, you need to know that if you're going to be like working as an audio engineer. Like that's my
And
profession.
like specifically like how those frequencies impact like brain waves and
Yeah,
things
I
like
mean,
that. Like,
I did a week long course on binaural beats, and like there was an assignment where I like had students make binaural beats and like turn them in, and we would like pick a frequency that they wanted to select and then try to get the result from it. Because you can actually like what binaural beats, for those that aren't familiar, binaural beats is a type of frequency based mind control where you offset the left and right ear frequency by a couple of hertz.
mm.
And the resulting frequency actually changes gamma wavelengths in your brain, where it synchronizes both hemispheres of the brain. So it like overrides your frontal cortex.
And they use that a lot in like the
Yeah, it's
music,
all over
right?
EDM. Taylor Swift
Yeah.
does it a lot, which is like I think like a lot of people wonder why Taylor Swift's fan base is like so cultish and like so clicky. It's because all of her music is mixed with binaural beats.
Well, did you see, when she did that huge tour and I think like 2023 in the summer, that Eras tour, and it was like the highest grossing, concert tour of all times. That like there were articles in like the New York Times, New York Post about how like all these people that were going to the concerts, they had like post-concert amnesia. Like they went and they paid like
Yeah,
$7,000 for their tickets and came out and were like, I don't remember a single thing.
yeah,
And there were like thousands of people that reported having this like experience of post concert amnesia. Like that's something you could like look up. Taylor Swift post
yeah.
concert amnesia.
I don't look. I read about that. It's interesting. It's an interesting phenomenon because I think I don't think you can put that on the audio aspect of things just because of the nature of how sound systems work in
No, there's
stadiums.
okay, there's definitely like MK Ultra Project Monarch activities going involved with that, including the frequency stuff. But when it comes to people blacking out, like there's so many more things that can be
That's
going on. It's like not
yeah.
it's not only
Well,
drugs. They actually have ointments they can rub on people and like cause
yeah, and
blackouts, or
also
even melt you, make your genitals. They even have
also
ointment they can rub on you, make your genitals melt off like right
Well,
in the spot.
it's also
also
like
there's like
the visual stuff that they were like showing on the screens and like the stage performance. Like they were doing like all kinds of like crazy witchcraft like covens like on stage and projecting it like the light patterns, like it all is like a
yeah.
combination of all those things that were generating these responses.
Yeah, I don't think you can get the frequency stuff. I was going to say, so I don't think you can get the binaural beat stuff to work in a live setting. No one's ever been able to do it. Just
Mm,
like you
mm.
only get it to work on headphones because
Oh, okay.
you
Okay.
actually need the right and left ear to be separated for
Okay.
it to work. So like if you're standing in a stadium and there's a speaker array, you're hearing both speakers through both ears. That's how the physics of it
And they
work.
they can't offset
So
it
you
basically.
can't offset it. No, you
Okay.
can't. But I think there's also a phenomenon of just like mass-induced psychosis. You saw this with Elvis. You saw this with the Beatles. You saw this
Hmm.
with certain really big acts where there were this like fanatic level of like little psychosis during the shows. I think if you had a reporter around when the Beatles did their first American tour and you asked the average girl if they remembered anything from the concert, they would probably say
Yeah.
no.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I mean, do you think that like the Beatles, I mean, there's a lot of talk about how the Beatles were like all of that music was created by Theodore Adorno from the Frankfurt School? I mean, do you give any credence to that? What do you guys think about that?
I haven't looked into it too much. I kind of think the Beatles are
Uh,
shit, so I don't really care.
yeah.
Well,
I mean,
the Beatles were definitely the Beatles were definitely with Tavistock, and Tavistock, that's like the British crown end overseeing these MK Ultra operations. They're actually joined at the hip with the Hermetic Order. They're joined at the hip with the Hermetic Order, the Golden Dawn, and the Theosophic Society.
Right.
My read with the Theodore Adorno. Hold on, I'm answering the angle with the Theodore Adorno thing. I'm not entirely sure if like they actually just were fed his theory, or if it's more like that was part of the Tavistock training. So I think it's like part of it, but maybe like 1/6, and there's other things in there. But I think there is some. It does seem like there is something to it, though. I will say that
he definitely was working at Tavistock.
Yeah, he was.
He definitely
there is an interesting thing with the Beatles that kind of ties into a theme from the beginning of the conversation we were having tonight, going back into the role of technology and the externalization of the hierarchy, is that the Beatles did two things that were technologically significant that is worth talking about. And one of them is actually the advent of stereo sound. Prior to the Beatles, music was recorded in monophonic sound, meaning that it was only coming from one source, one speaker, right? The Beatles, through the technology developed at Abbey Road Studios with Bowers and Wilkins engineering, developed the left-right channel and the audio consoles that are able to track in left-right channels. And so this had a fascinating downstream effect, because all of a sudden Ford manufacturing in America had to design cars that had speakers in both doors, right? So you think about the downstream effect of stereo appearing, and it was strictly the Beatles. Now, there's another thing that the Beatles did that was fascinating. It gets kind of complicated into some complicated music history. There's a concept from the French avant-garde of the late 50s and early 60s called musique concrète, which is a form of electronic. It's basically, the definition would be electronic music that's pre-recorded but presented as art music, meaning any kind of like manipulated sounds that are pre-recorded and arranged into a collage or a mosaic. It's essentially how we make music today, is musique concrète. But they were the first to actually adopt this into pop music, and they didn't get into it until they got into acid and all the weird stuff. So it didn't happen until the White Album specifically. But Number 9, the cryptic track Number 9, Number 9, Number 9, was developed at Earcam with Pierre Schaeffer, who coined the term musique concrète as a piece of subliminal occult avant-garde art. The downstream effect of that, I think, is pretty profound, because that's really one of the first instances of electronic music. And there's all sorts of binaural stuff in that track too. If you go and you listen to the White Album and you listen to Number 9, like there's some pretty spooky stuff in that track that they were messing around with.
Well, and the White Album is like specifically like what inspired Charles Manson and the family.
Yeah, Helter Skelter.
I mean, there's I mean, and that's a crazy song, and that like Helter Skelter, you're like, oh, that's like what heavy metal sounds like.
Almost.
Yes.
Well, then the Black Album's a direct reference to the White Album too, with Metallica, and I'm sure you guys, based on the direct messages, Habsburg, Jolly West, that you've sent me, I'm sure you know about Metallica, right?
I know less about Metallica than I know about the Beatles, but to some degree, yeah. I mean, they're from San Francisco. I mean, like, they're from like the MK Ultra capital.
Well, there's all the good metal bands come out of San Francisco, bro.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, heavy like San Francisco is to heavy metal what Seattle is to grunge.
Yeah,
and it's all it's all MK Ultra too, 100%.
Out of the big five, the big five metal bands, I think Anthrax is the only one that's not from San Francisco.
Who are the other big five?
It's Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer. No, it's big four. It's Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax.
And they're all from San Francisco.
Anthrax is from New York.
Okay, but Dave Mustaine, like, wasn't his dad some kind of like intel, like, or military, like,
Probably,
intelligence or
dude.
something like that?
That guy's straight up CIA.
Yeah. No, like this. I've read something about his father is like, some high level.
Oh wait, Jordan, how do you know? Okay, so let's get into rap also. Is rap free from feds? What about Run DMC? Yes, I know. You know for a fact they're feds too.
Well, yeah, it's funny. So one of my last gigs I did in New York, I was actually technical director for Run DMC at New York Comic Con. So I worked a show with them. They're like really fun guys, but man, they're fucking feds.
Well, that's why they got the show on MTV too,
Yeah,
right? I
it's
mean,
yeah,
and he was Russell Simmons's
dude,
brother. I mean,
they're all in the FBI, bro.
yeah,
Like the thing is they are all in the FBI, and their entire shit was designed by the CIA to create social distortion and bedlam in the 90s because
Well, yeah. Then you
they
had.
needed
Oh
the
yeah. Then
CIA.
Houston.
What's funny is that the CIA desperately needed something to cover up the fact that they were the causation of the crack epidemic. So then they created gangster rap to kind of smoke screen over the fact that they were bringing
Well,
in
then push
inordinate
codeine.
amounts.
They had Big Floyd. They had Big Floyd come up in Houston, which is Syrup City. So right as Houston started producing codeine and DXM, George Floyd's like,
Yeah,
smoke
and
this, drink lean.
yeah, so
well,
it's
and
crazy
what's crazy?
if you go and look on YouTube and you search for DJ Screw Big Floyd. DJ Screw is the guy that invented the style of chopped and screwed like codeine rap
Yep.
that is like Houston. He made like an entire album with George Floyd, dude. They have like tracks together.
And
Oh yeah, no. So George Floyd. This is unrelated to externalization, but George Floyd, he was actually a Mason with Derek Chauvin, and there's even pictures of George Floyd and Derek Chauvin working as security detail.
his half brother is Steven Jackson, the basketball player that became like totally.
You can't make this shit up.
But when you talk about like gangster rap, like NWA obviously is like the group that made that the whole thing, but like Ice Cube, who was like the like probably the most prolific member of that group, his original group before NWA was called CIA,
Yeah, I know, dude. It's
literally
so funny.
called CIA. And then what's crazy is like, and if you remember, like in the late '80s, early '90s, like Georgetown University, they had a black coach for their basketball team, and they became like like huge in the hip hop scene, and they were all wearing Georgetown and like wearing like the blue colors in Georgetown, and Ice Cube was like head to toe in Georgetown Hoya stuff all the time.
I know,
Georgetown being
dude.
like like the Jesuit program
Bro,
Yeah,
I think
Georgetown runs the State Department. Georgetown
No,
runs the
literally.
state.
And,
bro,
and,
I
and
think
you had Ice Cube, Snoop Dogg. They were all draped in Georgetown gear.
dude, the Jesuits be crip walking.
They be
Absolute
crip
low.
walking,
They
no
do.
doubt.
Yeah. Well, by the way, did you know that P Diddy actually held a Diddy party at the DC Grand Lodge?
Yes.
Yes.
No, like I gotta say, I really like Ice Cube as a person. Like he's delightful to work with.
He's a smart dude.
Yeah,
Too,
he's a total sweetheart. Like
but he's a Fed.
he's a Fed. I don't think he's up to anything anymore. I think he's pretty much out of that game, and he's just kind of like taking his doing his shows here and there, and that's about it. But back in the day,
Well,
man, he was a top level agent.
Well, I think okay. So, do you remember like a couple years ago he was doing like interviews with like Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan, and
Yeah,
he was like pushing like the anti-vax narrative. But if you watched any of those interviews, he made like the whole circuit that one summer. It was like 2 summers ago, and he like went on every podcast and every big one, and he was saying he wasn't saying like man, like this thing is like bad, like they're doing this. He's like, well, I just didn't think it was ready yet, so I didn't want to take it. They made it too fast. It wasn't ready yet,
right.
like that was like his rationale, and like I was like, oh man, like that. Seems like a weird side narrative to spin that it's like, yeah, I didn't take the vax and I lost all this money for not doing these movies, but it was only because I didn't think it was ready yet. And like once it got tested, like it would be okay. You know? Like
Dude,
that's what he
yeah.
said. If you go back and watch him on Rogan, that's what he was saying.
That you know what that might actually be. I think that might actually be someone who's conflicted and doesn't want to go with the regime narrative at the time, but also wants to be able to play it safe a little bit. So I think
There's
that might
also
actually.
there's also don't underestimate the age-old power of good old black skepticism. Because
Which is
get
legit. I mean, the
yeah, it's
Tuskegee
legit.
experiment.
It's
Like, no
legit.
doubt.
It's legit. No
No
doubt.
doubt.
Like I don't blame them for it, but that's also a factor.
But they need people like him to reinforce that is
Yeah,
kind of what I'm
100%.
saying. But
Yeah.
like